You're listening to Edging the Truth.
Welcome to Edging the Truth, the podcast that takes you to the edge of truth, but no further. Welcome to episode 39. We're talking aquatic cryptids. I'm here with my usual fellow doubters, maybe. I guess we could say we're doubters. I think we're officially all doubters. I'm here with Andy, a.k.a. Fudge, and Brian, a.k.a. Shenanigan. I'm Red, a.k.a. Dave. Cryptids is a word not everybody knows. It just means like fictional creatures, right? That's how I've always kind of described it to people and shit. And we've talked about a few on this podcast in the past. We did a whole episode about the Loch Ness Monster. We also just recently, in our most recent episode, talked about a potential mermaid skeleton found on the beach in Australia. This one's still sticking with me, actually, Fudge. What about you?
Yeah, it's weird. I'm waiting for some kind of official verdict to come out about it. I want to know what the hell that thing was.
What about you, Brian? Are you a mermaid believer?
I believe anything's possible in these oceans. I'm more of a alien believer, that mermaids are aliens coming to a vacation in our waters. I find that believable.
Okay, you're just gonna connect. We're gonna start just connecting everything to
bones
aliens
of poop,
from
baby.
here on
We
out.
found bones. That's all I'm saying. We found more of a mermaid than we have of a Bigfoot yet. Okay,
Well,
I don't see
true.
where's your pile of Bigfoot bones? Where's that at? I don't see that. So no, I mean it's and I'm more of a believer too of mermaids where the fish part's on the top and the lady part's on the bottom. That's my preferred mermaid.
Wow. Okay.
Didn't they do that like in an episode of Family Guy or something? Where it was the fish on the top, but he had a fucking dick and balls, and guy had just regular human legs. I think they did that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I need to find
I
this.
prefer my mermaids.
Yeah,
I need to. I definitely need to find this. Well, as it turns out, these two kinds of types of cryptids kind of help us draw a line between the two different kind of main types. And if you go to Wikipedia or any of these, big cryptid databases, they kind of fall into two categories. The first category is sort of your usual lake monster, and the Loch Ness Monster is that, right? It's a thing that's in a lake. It's sighted every so often. It's usually associated with some kind of folklore or story or blah blah blah. And then you've got your ocean faring kind of water monsters or things that maybe are a little bit of both. We've got a couple that I think are so bizarre and crazy image wise. We're going to have to show you some pictures. But let's dive into some of these lake monsters. Our first official lake monster is called Champ. This is
You got it, Champ.
And I think it's also interesting, by the way, to point out there's a lot of these lake monsters in Canada.
You don't say.
Wildfires and lake monsters in Canada. According to Wikipedia, in American folklore, Champ or Champy is the name of a lake monster said to live in Lake Champlain, a 125-mile long body of freshwater shared by Vermont and New York, with the portion extending into Quebec, Canada. Of course, this is a tourist draw. Over the years, there have been, over 300 reported sightings. Apparently, the origin story comes from Iroquois legends. These lake monster things, they're always interesting to me. And of course, somebody always inevitably has a photograph, and there's a famous photograph from the 70s about this. And, I don't know. What do you guys think about these kinds of things?
Brian, go ahead.
Well,
Brian, I see a lot of skepticism.
Yeah, I'm not a believer of the lake monster. Okay, I would not even necessarily say that the Loch Ness Monster was a lake monster, because like that shit was connected, to other bodies of water all the way out to the ocean. You know what I'm saying? But man, lakes. All right, we've pretty much explored the lakes. We have not explored the ocean. But the lakes, we pretty much got them lakes down. You know what I'm saying? And it's moreover, all of these lakes, most of these lakes in these areas where they have these sightings, freeze over 100% in winter. So you're telling me that all of these monsters adapt the unique skill to stay alive in the winter of the frozen lakes and all that stuff? And I'm a meh to lake monsters. I'm I don't. Fudge, what's your lake monster? You live by the lakes.
I just want to say that was lazy as hell, Brian. You don't think they could fucking migrate and swim up somewhere to warmer waters?
Not if they're
They're
not
in a
attached to
lake.
nothing.
I mean, we did explore the idea of like the underground passageways with Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that. I feel like, you know.
Yeah. I guess, okay, yeah, if the lake's not connected to any river or anything like that, then that wouldn't make sense. But okay. There's just like so many different like explanations, I guess, for these things, right? So this champ it's a sea serpent. It's described as having like vertical coils or humps in the water. There's a lot of different fucking fish or different sea, like one of the creatures that somebody claimed that was to see as this champ was sea lion. Like it very well could. There's a lot of different things that are swimming around in these lakes that you could interpret to look like a fucking sea monster or a lake monster, yeah. I should say. So I guess I'm open. Like I feel like there's a lot of very big lakes out there with not every single inch of them have been explored. So who knows what's out there? But I think in this case, this champ, the one you brought up first, I don't know. This one doesn't feel like there's too much merit. Feels like there's been several sightings. A couple guys claim to have caught baby champs.
Yeah.
And have released them. It was like
baby champ. That's a baby champ.
In 1968 and then 1991. W. Haglund claims to have caught a baby catty near DeCourcy Island, only to return it to water. In July of 91, on Johns Island, Phyllis Harsh claims to have caught a small 2-foot baby catty and returned it to the water. Several carcasses that have washed up on the shore that they've, associated with it, but I don't know. It feels. It's a gray area.
I'll just stack right upon what you just said. All these people caught stuff fishing. We've been fishing these lakes for generations. All right.
Yeah.
And Native Americans before that, and so it's like, I think we know what's in the lakes. I think we'd have caught something that caught something. It's just. Look, people catch and release. Somebody catch that shit for the story.
We talked a little bit about there's genetic abnormalities in all kinds of species. There's children born with 6 fingers and, all kinds of stuff like that. And we don't chalk that up to some kind of mythology or, intervention by aliens or radiation or whatever. That's just how things happen. And so animals can be, I think animals being found in nature that do look strange and don't look normal and are messed up in some genetic way lead to these kinds of stories. I think, since we're talking Canada's also got a whole trio of other lake monsters. There's Igopogo, there's Manipogo, and there's Ogopogo. And Ogopogo and Igopogo are both kind of near me in British Columbia, Canada. Manipogo is, as you would expect,
in Manitoba.
In Manitoba, yes. It is interesting, I think, that in some cases, for example, in Manipogo, there's a whole 100-year history of sightings of what this creature might supposedly be. Again, it's always comes back to it's a large creature, it's about this long, it's et cetera, very similar descriptors. But, they've done entire television series about most of these things that we're talking about, and most of them have been disproven and there's been no evidence found. So I'm always a little skeptic, especially since these things are tourist draws. I live in the Northwest. Once you're outside of the city kind of corridor, Seattle and Tacoma, if you start driving south, once you pass Tacoma, everything between Tacoma and Central Oregon, there's Bigfoot stuff in the gas stations along the freeway. Every single one. So even the Wikipedia articles say that some of these things are tourist draws for these towns. What's a lake? Is there a lake in near Las Vegas that we could just manufacture a lake monster for?
We got Lake Mead, and there's plenty of lake monsters in there from all the bodies that have been dumped in there by the mob over the years. I mean, like, dude, even Big Bear Lake, yet another man-made lake. If that is a lake made by a dam, has a quote-unquote monster in it, and it's like, this lake didn't exist here before you guys. Like, it's like,
yeah,
but I mean, these are stories that are kept alive by the local paper for 100 years to be a draw to bring people, and like, you know, they attach this crap to fishing tournaments. Like, you know, like, come on, we're doing the Great Fishing Tournament. Maybe you'll catch the so-and-so. You know, it's like, these are the old, because there's always wasn't it The Simpsons where he fought the fish, you know, like Uncle Sherman?
Oh,
and it was like this mythical fish that you catch. It's just, every lake's got them. Every bait shop's got a story. And that's for most of these freshwater lakes. You know, and because I know as man, especially in all these years, as many of these have been around for a long time, you know what I'm saying? It's like, bro, we hunted the buffalo to extinction. That's all I'm going to say. If there was lake monsters, there would have been some old timey hunters in fucking beaver pelts hunting those motherfuckers until they could hang them up as trophies at a Wild Bill circus. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
yeah. I feel like I especially since some of these have been discovered, you know, as far back as then, you know, the turn of the century, 1800s into 1900s. You're exactly right. Those guys, they would have been like, let's catch that thing, let's mount it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get to the other side of the lake, you know that you and your boys can be out there fishing every day for this monster.
Yeah,
because odds are you fishing out there every day to feed your family anyway.
Well, we just did a little roundup of Canada. There's also a lake monster in a place that a lot of these fictional mythical folkloric characters come from, and that's Japan. Lake Ikeda is supposedly the home of Issei, a Japanese lake monster, described as being supposedly having been a white horse that lived on the shore of the lake. Her small horse, her child, whatever, was kidnapped by a samurai, and in her despair turned into this crazy beast by jumping into the lake. First reportedly photographed in 1978. And we don't hear much about it very much anymore.
I call this a modern myth right here, because there is like, you try to go deeper. There's no deeper. There's not an ancient Japanese. There's no animes based on this. I'm just going to tell you that.
that's you're not wrong. Not wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just want to say, earlier when we were talking about Champ, I definitely was mixed it up with the Cadborosaurus.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. That one's a super fun one.
Yeah, because that's what I was reading off. I was talking about the baby caddy. Those were caddies, not the champies. Apologies. Just want to clear that up before somebody comes at us with some misinformation.
Like, you read Wikipedia wrong, bitch.
Yeah, no shit. We're gonna get community noted on Twitter so hard.
Or we'll just go change Wikipedia so we're right.
Yeah, no shit. We could do that.
I mean, I want to visit some of these places. How do we go visit some of these places, right?
That's exactly. See, you said it. It's all tourism. That's exactly what they want us to do.
Yep.
You're buying right into it. This one's interesting though, because like, this is just a lady who's. Oh no, it was a horse, a white mare. Okay.
Yeah, a horse, a white horse that supposedly,
that
loses
its
child and
aquatic.
Yeah, a
Come
horse
on.
that turns
At
into
least I
this
feel like
crazy
a
creature.
lot of these other ones are grounded that it's some sort of creature. This is like about spiritual horsefish.
Well,
Okay,
I
it's
I thought this was just a lady that got her kids stolen and jumped in the lake, and it was suddenly a monster. I guess I can get more behind the horse,
isn't that
so it makes it a little bit
isn't
more
that the La
believable.
Lorna? Isn't that what happened? Is that Mexican folklore? Like where
That's
are we
it.
going here?
Yeah,
We're all over the place with
that's a whole
people
other universe
sacrificing
of
for
that's
stuff.
Molina. Yes. Well, I think that when you look at like the a lot of these, they are based in some kind of folklore, right? They're either based, at least in the Americas, a lot of them seem to be based in Native American folklore or indigenous people folklore, whatever the proper term is these days. And especially in some of these older cultures, like Japanese culture, they have long traditions of folkloric characters and mythologies and things like that. So it doesn't surprise me that they would come up with a way to apply that to this universe. Of course, there's sea creatures in Japan. Brian and I have tracksuits with Japanese dragons on them.
Yeah. Dude, all these fish, these are fishing tales. I mean, these are all from fishing cultures. At one time or another, everybody kind of relied on the sea if you were on the coast. And to this day, today, fishermen catch fish they've never seen before.
Yes.
To this day.
Yes.
So can you imagine all the way back then, them discovering a fish or a jellyfish or some weird shit they never saw before? I mean, and that's where, you get sea monsters and stuff.
Well, yeah, and that's very true. Fudge and I talked about the giant oarfish in the recent episode of Two Steps from the Edge. And it's just one of these super, super rare things that people don't see very often. And so get pictures of it and to get pictures of one so big or super rare. But in some of these articles, they are the explanation for the myths. They're like, yeah, this is probably what they saw. They probably saw a giant oarfish, or they saw this, or they saw that. I don't know about you, Fudge, but the images of the oarfish are also still such a strong image in my head. I can close my eyes. I can see that picture of that diver and that crazy elongated shape of that fish with the holes in it. It's still an image I won't forget.
Yeah,
Haunting him.
Very,
like
very weird. Very weird. I don't know. There's just so much shit, whether it's in the ocean or in some of these big vast lakes, that you don't, like you said, you don't see them every day. And Brian, you put up a good point. Like, I'm sure these people back in 1800 or the early 1900s that were fishing found some shit that had nobody ever seen before, and they had to be like, what the fuck is this? Just absolutely blew their minds. That is a big thing, a big theme with a lot of these creatures, a lot of these stories. It's a lot of word of mouth. Like, not a lot of it's sightings, not a lot of it's like written stuff, like, or not a lot of it is like actual physical evidence they can point to. It's word of mouth. It's stories that maybe your grandparents or something would pass down to you, and it just goes as like a tradition, or one of those stories that just everybody knows about, that you kind of take it for what it is, but it's a fun tradition that you might have.
It is also interesting.
And real quick, even that oarfish you guys saw, I know the only other time I ever saw an oarfish is at the Natural History Museum in LA. They got a giant one in the lobby in formaldehyde. Like, it's a giant oarfish that's there. That's the only time I've ever seen an oarfish, and that's the only reason I recognize them. Like, oh yeah, I remember seeing it at the museum. But that's that's the only place that had been there. That's been there that was like one of the first exhibits at the museum. That's been there a long fucking time.
I mean, it just goes to show you that so many things, you think about, exploration of just places, not forget about dealing with the wildlife and the plant life and categorizing and naming and all that kind of stuff. That has all happened within the last 250 years for the most part. So it's not like this is ancient information. There are things that we're talking about that, were first cited in our lifetimes, and some things that were cited, well before our great grandparents were born. I think it's interesting too that we're also starting to, as we go through this list, we're starting to see a little bit more diversity. We just talked about one in Japan. There's an interesting lake monster story from Russia, the Labankir Devil, first sighted, or at least first written about in 1953. And it was, again, a giant weird animal, maybe a giant pike, a weird reptile, or some kind of weird amphibian, some remains of jaws and skeletons of something, and, various weird reports. But at least this one was investigated somewhat by the Freshwater Biology Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences. So, like, at the very least, some of these have some proper investigation by the governments where they are, have that purview. I don't see our government investigating Champy.
I mean, I definitely see some grad students doing papers on that shit and doing investigations. I bet if you dig into some doctorates, there's people that wrote shit about Champy somewhere. I mean, but it's, it's, and even then, I'm sorry if I don't trust the what the Russian division of freshwater lakes was that like
the Freshwater Biology Institute. I mean, come on, it's a household name.
They were using sonar and shit. Like,
oh yeah. Who also uses sonar? My uncle while he's fishing. All right. Like,
yes.
There was a couple. There also was a couple.
I don't think that they had the greatest technology over there in Russia to do the thorough investigation that we imagine in our heads.
Sure, but apparently there were fishermen on the lake. Also, I mean, maybe it was your uncle there in Russia, Brian, using sonar that picked up something big under their boat. The claims of boats shaking. When the lake was super calm, like something was swimming under them, weird trails in the water, boat being capsized, felt like somebody was underneath it pushing it up, and then the boat ended up sinking, and then actual like government society like going and looking at this thing, and I don't know, to me that means like there's actually there might be something there. I don't know, that makes me think about it a little bit harder if the Russian Geographic Society and Diving Sport Federation of Russia put together we get the federations involved putting together scientific expeditions,
scientific coalition.
You get Fudge's attention, all right?
Well, we've got two more of these lake monsters, and one of them I think falls more in line with Brian's theories. We're going to go to Norway now, which, if we're talking about fishing, I think the Norwegians kind of have, they do have a lock on
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason there's a Norwegian fisherman on my Vandy camps. That's all I'm saying.
Well, see, so in Norwegian folklore, Selma is a legendary sea serpent said to live in the 13-kilometer long Lake Seljord. I'm not sure how you pronounce that in Norwegian, but it's been written about since 1750. So it again, 1750, a big thing knocked your boat over while you're going across a lake. And maybe it has serpent-like features, or you see something that doesn't make sense. I feel like this falls into that category of just something big and weird in the water. Maybe a fish, maybe not a fish, maybe just something in the water, maybe just kelp, maybe an animal in kelp. Who knows? What do you guys think?
I think there's so many different things that somebody could spot that look a certain way. Swimming across the water where you'll never really know. It is interesting though that you have like sightings of this thing going all the way back to 1750. Apparently it was some guy that was not swimming. He was in a boat rowing across the lake, and this apparently circled around him. Sightings were said to happen on calm, hot summer days. So I don't know, but there's not really a ton of information on this one, but there's just so much there's so many different things you could say. Oh, well, it could be this. It could be this. It could be a sea snake. It could be a sea lion or what have you, swimming across the water.
But
It's
I
also
like
curious
how,
that it's
go ahead,
also
go ahead.
curious that it's on the coat of arms for the town. Back to the tourism angle.
Well, that was where I was going to go, right? Because it's right here in the thing, designed by sculptor
Yeah.
Tiger of Magnus, which is everybody fucking named Magnus, and his last name is Barstad, which sounds like bastard. I almost said Magnus Bastard.
Yeah.
And like, so it was like, this is what this dude thought the serpent looked like, and they're like, that's it.
Yeah.
And
And that
that's
was
how
in
it's
the
been since
80s,
he
I
made
think,
it.
that they made that coat of arms.
Magnus.
Yeah.
He also does tough man competitions on the weekend, because if your name is Magnus, you have to be in the strongest man.
Well, I do think it's curious that in this giant list, there haven't been any from South America, a place that has lots of folkloric traditions, whether, you're talking about ancient cultures or whatever.
And giant
the
slithery shit in the water with the freaking anacondas and stuff.
Well,
I
think that's the trick, is that you get more of these sort of land-based kind of creatures, things that walk around. But we do have one last lake monster from Africa. And this is sort of, again, a hybrid of mythology, religious history. Mamlambo is a deity in South African and Zulu mythology, the goddess of rivers, who is described as a large snake-like creature. Now, again, folkloric, but now in 1997, we're starting to get sightings and people saying they saw it, and then it was 60 feet long, and it had the head of a horse and the body of a fish, but it also had legs and the neck of a snake, and it shined green at night. And yeah, so then we kind of cut. They call it the brain sucker, because apparently it eats faces and brains. There was an actual expedition on one of the sci-fi shows, Destination Truth. They never came up with anything.
I wonder why.
An interesting quote from a writer named Felicity Wood points out that, quote, the Mamlambo tends to be associated with Western forms of prosperity like money. So the fact that she is often depicted as a Western mermaid. She has arisen in part from a sense of disconnection to a traditional communal way of life, inequalities and imbalances in the social order, and the lure of Western materialism. Like Mami Wata, she is a dangerous, seductive figure, offering wealth and power, but able to bring about terrifying ruin. This definitely sounds more like mythology than actual creature to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's called African alligators. We all seen them National Geographics where the watering holes and them alligators, they're big. They're big. And I could definitely see that being. And also, yeah, I don't doubt that there's giant snakes out there in the water, man. There's snakes everywhere. Big old snakes. Well-fed snakes get real big. We've seen them. You always have them on the news as a sideshow effect. Those exist in the wild, not just in someone's aquarium somewhere. But, I mean, and it's once again, uneducated people just don't understand. Like I said, if you saw an alligator and didn't know what it was, that's a monster to you,
Yeah.
And its head could look like a horse and its back could look like a hey-ho-hey. I mean, it's just, it's an alligator. But I go mad at this.
Or a horse could have met a very special fish, and they could have made sweet, sweet love. And
Special fish.
Now we have the Mamlambo.
Fudge. You know what? You turned me around. I didn't think about interspecies sexual activity in Africa, and it's hot over there, so things happen.
It's hot. This horse is walking up to the lake, puts its head down to, get a drink of water as he's down there. He locks eyes with the fish and can't look away. And suddenly they're talking, and they just felt like they've known each other their entire lives, and it just feels right. Like they just feel safe, and one thing leads to another, and they lean in for a kiss, and things get a little hot and heavy real quick, and 9 months later, little Mamlambo's here.
First of all, that's not how fish work. All right? Second of all,
Yeah. I'm
like,
pretty sure there are different
Brian, it's a
sexual
fake monster.
functions.
It doesn't have to work.
Second of all, yeah, you created an NPC character right there. Like his backstory, I was vested. I was like, oh, that's so nice. But is that
I
fish
feel like
gonna
we've
jerk off
got-
that horse onto its eggs? Like, how's that going to work out? Like,
We've got at least 2 movie scripts out of this show so far. So.
we're not supposed to be writing stuff. There's a strike on.
Well, I think that wraps it up for Lake Monsters. We're all pretty much in agreement that these are in most cases either exaggerated folklore, a tall story that leads to more tourism, or just plain old ignorance and lack of science knowledge when it was first discovered. But that brings us to the more fun kinds of creatures. And that's your typical, ocean-faring kinds of things. Now, we've got a real special list, and some of these are so preposterous, but they have to be talked about. I'm going to jump around this list a little bit. I want to start with the Ningen, only because this was a very definitely internet-created thing. This is something new. It has not been around for generations and generations, but it is from Japan. The Ningen, the legends of the Ningen began in 2002 that claimed members of a whale research ship witnessed a creature as it was surfacing near their ship in the Antarctic. They thought it was a submarine. Went in to take a closer look, couldn't find it. It disappeared in the waves. And then a few years later, Google Earth supposedly captures it, but it's probably just an iceberg. And then in 2010, someone took some video, published some video. But the most interesting and intriguing part of this is that this has 100% been debunked as an invention of the internet. And yet, look at the picture of this thing.
Look at this.
Dude,
All
it
right,
looks like a fucking sperm. That looks like sperm with legs.
Now, it has been depicted with arms as well, but this is the common depiction of this. Let me just say, it's all face and butthole. That's all this is.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to this. It's just,
I mean,
that's it. That's the whole thing, is face and butthole with legs.
did any of you watch
That is
Doom
a sample.
Patrol that had just the butts running around on legs? Like, that's what this thing looks like.
Mhm. Yeah. It's, and first of all, like, if they were in a submarine, how did it disappear in waves? All right? There's no waves under the sea like that. Like, it's...
Well, they are in the Antarctic, and you would think it's not too
You're a marine
crazy. At least
biologist
if they're
now?
exploring, maybe they're creating the waves with their wake.
With their feet wake.
Yeah. This, like, imagine
Oh.
this thing just walks out of the fucking ocean. What are you doing, fellas? Fellas, how many?
I mean, it's I'm just imagining like a whole pod of them, like lemmings, like 20 or 30 of them just like twittering around.
Just waddling up.
It very much feels Close Encounters-y to me too, like the end of Close Encounters when all the little creatures are running around and it's clearly children in the suits. This feels like that. Any believers in the Ningen in this room?
Fuck no.
No, I just think that it's, like I said, it is a creature of only mouth and butthole and legs. And I respect that. I respect that.
Okay, well,
Mouth,
let's
butthole,
go to
legs.
another similar looking creature. This comes from the United States. In Ohio folklore, the Loveland Frog, which is also known as the Loveland Frog Man or the Loveland Lizard, a legendary humanoid frog described as standing roughly 4 feet tall and allegedly spotted in Loveland, Ohio. In 1972, it gained renewed attention, so apparently it had been spotted much before 1972. A Loveland police officer reported to a colleague that he had seen an animal consistent with the descriptions of it. And then another reported sighting in 2016, another police officer saying that he had shot and killed the same creature some weeks after the 1972 incident. and had identified it as a large iguana that was missing its tail. Apparently first sighted in 1955. Traveling salesman driving along a road one night apparently saw a few of these things. This has also been covered in fiction. In 2023, that would be this year, the Loveland frog became the city's mascot. Well, I'll be damned. Tourism rears its ugly head once again. Let's take a look at an artist depiction of the Loveland frog.
Let me tell you guys, that frog crushes puss. That's all I'm telling you right now. That frog
Yeah.
gets after it.
Exactly
You know
in
what I'm
that
saying?
stance too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I shot this fucking thing. Let me put it in my trunk so I can go show him this other officer. Pops the trunk and he's like, "What the fuck is this thing?" Oh,
I mean,
it's the Frogman. That's actually an iguana. Like, how do you?
and that's when he got fired for alcohol drinking
It
on the
doesn't
job.
even-
I feel like
frog and an iguana
1970.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
doesn't
if it
even
was
look
the
at-
first sighting was in the 50s, then what was it in the 50s? Did somebody have a Komodo dragon they lost from the zoo, or it's 4 feet, it's big, it's not tiny, if it's an iguana, that's got to be the biggest iguana I've ever heard of that at 4 feet.
It could have been a lot of different lizards, especially like I said, it could have got away from like a circus or an sideshow. People at that time had like menageries at the house.
Yes.
So it's like if you were well off, that was like the thing, like that you had it. I mean, that was what the first zoo in San Francisco was made up of. They just confiscated all the animals that people had around town, basically.
Wow, is that true? I never
Yeah.
heard that.
No, and dude, there's still like some place in San Francisco where you can see the old like zoos that the rich people still had
People's private
they're,
zoos.
They're preserved, like the
Yeah.
the place was, and obviously those conditions were pretty inhuman for the animals. But it's like, yeah, this was like private zoos, and a lot of them still exist in San Francisco. And luckily, and San Francisco was a horrible zoo for a long time, like where they had like the elephant house where the elephants never went anywhere, but like in there, and like they really revamped that place a lot. It's a lot better now. But I remember going there when I was a kid, and I'm like, this is like, at the time I didn't know anything about anything, but yeah, that zoo was a horror show. I mean, the LA Zoo was too.
Yeah, I mean, this is more like, this falls like into lizard people for me. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, you don't believe that a frogman can be like out and about on these streets?
Frogman.
I mean, let's just go back to Fudge's.
Frogman.
Let's go back to Fudge's horse story. A guy walks up to a lake. He's tired and parched, and he sees a
drinks,
cute
and
little
there's
frog.
A frog there. Yeah, I mean,
Are you
come on.
buying this story at all? No.
I
Yeah,
believe this is the
he's-
basis of an anime.
This is
at
fairy.
least.
This is a fairy
He
tale.
sees
This
that
is the
big old
princess
frog
and the frog.
mouth, he instantly gets horny and just goes
Yeah.
to town.
No, I think we could sell this to Disney.
That's
is what I'm
the.
telling
I
you
think he
guys.
licked the
Mhm.
frog and started hallucinating. That's
Hell
what happened
yeah.
there.
Oh yeah,
Hell
brother.
yeah.
Well, I know you like this one, Fudge. Again, a folkloric character that, again, has sort of been brought back into legend, et cetera, et cetera. This is known as the Dobar Chu, or the water hound or king otter of Irish folklore, apparently resembling a dog and an otter, also described as half dog, half fish, lives in water and has fur. This has been around apparently since 1722, goes the legend. Apparently, the beast then died. It was killed like on its first sighting. But there was a second one and blah, blah, blah. And then the guy killed a second one. I feel like this is just a weird species of something. And people didn't know what it was.
King Otter. They killed a bunch of giant otters. I mean, that's literally like what it was.
Or a sea lion, or
Yeah.
what would be the equivalent of a giant sea otter, a sea lion, something along those lines.
Mhm.
Even a seal,
And it's a Dabarchu. Dabarchu.
The Dabarchu.
Dabarchu. I prefer
Hey.
my shoes to be in Pika form. I'm only about that Pikachu life.
Mhm.
That's it. That's the only
Are you
shoes
telling
I
me
go with.
Pikachus are actually Irish?
There's a
The chew part is.
yeah. There's a headstone found in Conwall Cemetery in Glendale County, Leitrim, that depicts the Dobberchew and is related to a tale of an attack on a local woman by the creature. The stone is claimed to be the headstone of a grave of a woman killed by the Dobberchew in the 18th century. The monument is a recumbent flag of sandstone about 4 feet 6 inches by 1 foot 10 inches, and it shows a recumbent animal having a body and legs of those of a dog with the characteristic depth and rib strength of thigh. The tail, long and curved, shows a definite tuft. The rear of the haunch and still more of the tail
The haunch.
are
Tell me
in
about the
exceptionally
haunches,
low
Fudge.
relief, apparently due to the loss of thin flake from the face of the slab. So far, the description is K9. The lettering and carving are in relief. Weird writing.
Yeah, I'm
there
not
on
buying this as
Wikipedia.
being. Yeah, I'm not buying this as anything more than.
I just like King. I'm just King Otter. I'm just picturing a giant ass otter with a little crown on it.
There are giant otters. They're endangered. They're big.
Well, very well could actually be one of them.
They're big.
Yeah. Well, speaking of big, here's one that I think everybody's well aware of, and that's the Megalodon. A very common cryptid, and again, also probably has some basis in fact. What do we think about Megalodon, boys? I mean, there's not a lot to talk about. It's a giant shark.
Once again, teeth at the National Museum in LA. The Natural History Museum has big megalodon teeth there. I remember that was one of the things I saw.
Brian, you should get a job there as the night
the
security
night
guard. Yeah,
to see what can come alive at night.
This one is cool. So there's people. Have you guys seen this trend on TikTok? There's like this shark tracker that people follow. It's like an app online where some company has a bunch of sharks with chips and shit on them that you can track and watch. They use GPS. That they use that to try to find evidence of a megalodon. I've seen a couple of those videos on TikTok. That's kind of trending right now. Obviously, the movie, The Meg, that was pretty big.
There's a new one coming out August 4th. The Meg 2, Electric Boogaloo.
The Meg 2, Electric Boogaloo. Look out for that in theaters. No free ads. I don't know. The fact that this like actually was a thing like millions of years ago makes me like think there could be some type of descendant of this that's still kind of lurking out there somewhere. Is it actually the Meg? Like, is it as big as the original one? I don't know. But I don't know. The ocean is scary.
Well, and I think too, it is interesting. One of the things that I posted in our research folder was, somebody spotted this very rare pink dolphin, and it's very pink, and it's definitely a dolphin, but it looks like something out of an anime cartoon. And so, is it some mythic creature? No, it clearly exists. It's a real thing. It's just super, super, super rare. And I think a lot of times that's what we're talking about. We're just talking about something that's super, super rare and maybe has only been seen a few times and wasn't seen enough times for anybody to do any real research and figure out what the heck the thing was. But it does seem like that Megalodon could be out there lurking somewhere, either in deep water or in unexplored water or who knows what. I mean, certainly great white sharks are not the most prevalent thing. They're not plentiful.
Right.
They're not something that people see every day, right?
But whale sharks. I mean, whale sharks are giant.
Well,
and if you saw a whale shark in the wild, you'd be like, "Whoa!" If you saw just a whale in the wild, you'd be like, "Whoa!" Like they're big.
Well, and there are also sort of cryptid versions of whales that are out there that people, have reported seeing. There's something called a rhinoceros dolphin that supposedly, has this sort of head reminiscent of a rhinoceros horn.
Is there some kind of app that like interspecies dating going on in the wild to get all these? Now we got a rhino and a
rhino
dolphin
whale
together. Yeah.
I feel like we could just make 2 wheel spins with different animals on them and just start hitting the wheel spins and go,
And then
ooh,
just
what
then-
about a
then put it in
canary
a
leopard
country
hybrid?
and assign it to that country. Like, this was here for 100 years.
Yeah.
And just
Well-
start making up our own shit and see what sticks.
I mean, we started talking about the Ningen, and that's basically what it was. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't come up with our own database, our own book of cryptids. They are fictitious / mythological. That is the point and what they are by definition.
Allegedly.
So, yeah, allegedly, correct. Well, let's see. What else should we check out? I feel like we definitely need to talk about this thing called the Amish. This is sort of one of our few sort of South American kinds of things. Apparently a mixture between a jaguar and an otter, maybe as big as an ox. Apparently seen in Argentina. Not a lot of data about it. Again, it supposedly first sighted in 1897 and a full study on the creature published in the 50s. Again, I feel like these are such weird creatures, and yet it's been 60 years and we've heard nothing more in the development of finding out what the thing is. That always makes me go, yeah, probably not. Probably doesn't exist. Probably was just something weird.
Yeah, this is weird because, I mean, it says here that upon peer review, contemporaries of Nietzsche and Roth, the guys that published the work, noted that though they had spent equal amounts of time with Patagonian natives, they had never heard of such a creature. Later scholars also cast doubt on the research by the Heuvelmans, noting that the word Amish isn't associated with any language spoken in Patagonia.
Yeah.
You're saying 2 guys made up a story to try to sell some of their research in books? Wow, I'm so surprised about this.
Yeah. It does remind me of the whole single point of origin theory about most of these conspiracy theories, is that it comes from one brain. And
But Red, I think you're bearing the lead on the best one on this whole list of the stellar sea ape.
we're
I mean,
gonna get
that is
there.
the best of the best.
It kind of is, because it has like one of the longest, histories of being cited. I like that the guys named the thing after himself. The German zoologist who observed it, George Steller, named it the Steller. It's called the Steller sea ape.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from closer to my neck of the woods. It comes from kind of northern Alaska. From the 1740s was when this thing was first seen, and it's been seen since. There's reports in the 1960s, et cetera, as well as some genuine research into this. But why do you think this is the best one?
Because it's clearly like a seal or fucking like a walrus. Like, it's exactly what it's like describes, like, to a T. Like, it's, long drooping whiskers, elongated but robust thick fur coat, no limbs, and tall fins. It's like, yeah, that's a fucking seal, bro. Like,
Seals don't have fur, do they?
Yeah,
I mean, they do.
yeah.
It's
But
usually
they
when we
were
see
hunted
seals, it's
for their
usually
fur.
pretty matted down.
They were
Is-
hunted for their fur.
Is it sea lions that don't then?
Sea lions, I mean, they probably
One of them
do,
One
but
of them that is just like blubbery, right?
it's sea lions don't look nearly as like an
Or maybe
otter.
I'm thinking of a walrus.
Walrus
And
is
walruses
definitely-
too. Well, sea lions and walruses look not that different, honestly. Sea lions are a little more elongated. I've seen a lot of sea lions just off the beach, standing on the beach, and seen seals and sea lions and a lot of that stuff.
And we've all sat and watched a sea lion for 2 hours playing on the seaside. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
try to shoot it afterwards.
Yeah. Well, and
Being
let's
super playful with this thing
these
for
are
2
guns from
hours.
1740. Also, there was no way he was gonna hit that. But I do like that. I do like that this is something that, again, at the time it was published and there were drawings made, and there was some genuine interest in this for the next 40 or 50 years in Germany. The Germans really we're gonna figure this thing out. What I think is also interesting is that there's also an animal that he claimed to have seen that's called Steller's sea cow, around the same time and around the same place. That they, at the same time, they have a skeleton for that other thing. So it's hard to say what exactly the truth of this one is, right? He did find this other weird thing that he didn't know what to name, and he named it this. It's called Steller's sea cow, and they have the skeleton, and it's in a museum. And then he saw this other thing, and he missed it and didn't get the skeleton. Do we want to put any more credence on that because of that?
I mean, that definitely gives him a little bit more credit. I don't know. I'm just now seeing that this thing apparently had its face looked like it had a Fu Manchu, so I'm in on that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, you mentioned this right at the top of the gate. Another one that has some sort of North American, Canada up the coast vibes. The Cadborosaurus. No relationship to the Cadbury egg. This name comes from Cadboro Bay in Victoria, British Columbia, real close to me. Again, this is one where they found this thing. They did have a carcass. It was photographed. There have been numerous other things over the years, including sea lions and giant oarfish that people thought were Cadborosauruses. It is also something that fits into sort of, again, native people's imagery and things like that. Apparently 300 sightings over the past 200 years, all over the West Coast. Apparently some video in 2009 and 2011. The Wikipedia page has a whole lengthy list of things that were supposedly found that fit into the category of this. I think these are all different things.
Yeah, so they have carcasses associated with the Cadbosaurus. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier with the whole, when we were supposed to be talking about the champ, because I'm an idiot. So 1930, 1934, 1937, 1941, 47, 50, 56, 62, 63.
Yeah, so many.
All carcasses that were washed up on shore or found or whatever. Creatures thought to be a whale, creatures thought to be a basking, or identified it as a basking shark, identified as a fetal baleen whale, identified as a shark, identified as a shark, identified as a shark, identified as a Baird's beaked whale, thought to be an elephant seal, a basking shark. So it's like all of these carcasses have now, they've all been debunked. They're like, oh yeah, no, that's a shark, that's a whale, that's whatever. And then again, I said this earlier, 1968, in August, W. Haglund claims to have caught a baby caddy near DeCourcy Island, only to return it to water. And then in 91, in July, on Johns Island, Phyllis Harsh claims to have caught a small 2-foot baby caddy and then returned it to the water as well. So it is interesting, though, that you said, Red, there's like 300 sightings of that. So it's obviously nothing, or not nothing.
Right.
It's obviously not nothing, is what I meant to say. And there was the video in 2009. Fisherman Kelly Nash reportedly filmed several minutes of footage featuring 10 to 15, including young creatures in Nishigack Bay. In 2011, very short segment of the footage was shown on the Discovery TV show Hill Stranded, where the Hillstrand brothers from Deadliest Catch apparently saw Nash's footage and unsuccessfully attempted to find one of the creatures.
Yes.
Which I'd love to see that Kelly Nash video to see what the hell those could possibly be. But I guess this one, I guess there's something there. is what I want to say. But if all of the times you found a carcass or anything like that, it's all been debunked. And then it says on here, Red, speaking of the oarfish, some suggestions have been made that the caddy could be an example of one of the king of herrings or giant oarfish. This species can reach 56 feet in length and weigh 660 pounds. Long and silvery. They undulate like a serpent, and they would swim through the water. So it could be the fish we've been talking about this whole time, Red. Boom.
Well, I do agree. I think that I feel like this, given all the sightings and given all the carcasses and given all the debunking, it just goes to show you these things are stories have a lot of legs over long periods of time. The last couple that we have don't have nearly as much, depth of information to a certain degree. The Lusca is a Caribbean area folkloric animal that's more like half shark, half octopus. And apparently they're apparently they're
on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Well, yes, there have been lots of creatures like this. Apparently, there's a survival video game called Stranded Deep that features Lusca the Great. That's a giant enemy squid, Kraken-like, if you will. I feel like this is, we know about giant squids. They're not a non-entity. That's a real thing. Didn't you see 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Under the sea.
What about what was that one you sent that was like the Russian lake?
Oh
that
yeah,
was, like,
I'm
the
saving
hoax?
that for I'm saving that one for last because it's my absolute favorite. The last kind of other ones that we have, there's besides this one, which is definitely fictitious, but my favorite in terms of story. We have this one in the Congo River Basin, the Mokele Mbembe, that's very much depicted as sort of, a brontosaurus kind of figure. Maybe it's more like an elephant or a hippopotamus, but again, lots of possible explanations, but conflicting reports about what it actually looks like. There have been documentary crews from the BBC to check this thing out. There have been all kinds of different explorations to try and figure out if this thing is real, and there hasn't been any kind of confirmation, despite a lot of efforts for the last 100 years to try to pin this thing down. Again, I feel like this is one of those. This doesn't fit so much into the aquatic, even though it is on the list of aquatic, and because it can live in the water like a hippopotamus. I feel like this is sort of a non-starter. If it's been debunked, it's been debunked. We don't need to figure out if it has or hasn't.
I like the description of it. Smooth skin, a long neck, and a single tooth or horn. He's just got one big old tooth.
Definitely sounds like a kid's character,
Yeah,
right?
just
Like
one
it should be in a
One big old
cartoon.
tooth.
I got one big tooth.
Yeah,
Love my
I'm not
big
buying
tooth.
it. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I'm not in on this one either.
And similarly, our last kind of type of aquatic cryptid that's sort of officially recognized on Wikipedia is just the generic sea serpent, which at this point we've talked around in circles the idea of what sea serpents are, and they're probably just a version of something else, or a piece of something else that's larger, right? Do anybody have other differing opinions than that?
I mean, I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to see a big old thing with actual.
Yeah, you would.
I'd love to see a big old thing, boys. I'd love to see a big old sea serpent slithering around through the water, but with actual legs and arms and stuff. That'd be kind of cool. I guess that'd be the classic like dragon look with what they're always depicted as. Very wavy and shit like that. But show me that thing, boys.
Show me that thing.
Yeah, Brian, I know you're all out on sea serpents. Yeah.
No.
So-
it's the backs of fish and dolphins, assorted whatnots and bric-a-bracs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing that I came across in looking up cryptids is a thing called Organism 46B. And I'm just going to read verbatim what is written here. The
Hell
creature
yeah.
designated Organism 46B was an aquatic beast allegedly captured by a Russian scientific team near the research outpost Vostok Station, which this is Antarctic. This very much has Thing vibes. If you've ever seen the movie The Thing, Organism 46B was an enormous 33 feet long, 14-tentacled squid-like creature which lived in Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake located under 2 miles of ice beneath Vostok Station in the Antarctic. The animal had limbs that were animate and aggressive even after amputation. So once you cut the arms off, they were still alive. And could release a toxin into the water to immobilize its prey from a distance of up to 150 feet, displaying an astonishing degree of shape-shifting and showed a considerable degree of both hostility and intelligence. This Vostok Station, which does exist, it was established by the Soviets in 1957. It was then discovered that there was this underwater lake under the ice in the 70s. Supposedly after 30 years of drilling, that was how this thing was found and the story broke. I just love all of these, it's part alien, right? The whole thing that it's got acid for blood. I feel like that's a little version of this. Supposedly they finally captured the creature in a tank, and then, taken away for all eternity to be studied and no one will ever find out about. One of these doctors who supposedly was involved has said, hey, this was a story made up by this fiction author, and here's the name of the guy who wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And
it's so... Go ahead.
I was going to say my favorite thing is the first comment on this wiki article is the person says, I've seen The Thing and Leviathan too.
It's so bizarre. Like, yeah, we're gonna drill through 2 miles of ice directly into this lake that's right underneath it. We're all gonna dive in and get this get this 33-foot, 14-tentacled octopus thing. That, by the way, that can shapeshift.
Yeah, you forgot about the
as
shape-shifting.
Yeah. There was a part in the story where it kills one of the people because it swims towards them, but shapeshifts as somebody in scuba gear.
Yeah.
And the person doesn't realize till it's too late, and they're getting shredded to bits. But yeah, it was a fun story, nevertheless, but like super unrealistic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not buying this one, Brian? Even as a fan of The Thing?
I mean, I'm all for your classic shape-shifting stories of our time, but meh. Like, I'm like, there's so much to this, and like when I first was like it was just everything about it was ridiculous. Okay, like every single thing, shape-shifting, shooting toxins. Like just the fact that it's like Organism 46B, like it's fucking like it's Weapon X over here, like it's an X-Man designation. Like,
it's very
what was
comic
Organism
booky.
41 to 45? That's my question. Where are those?
It's like Ripley 1 through 7
to 100. Like, come on, like it's just
I mean, I feel like at this point, even with the most far-fetched and the most realistic of aquatic cryptids, there's not a single one here that we're really like, yeah, I could see that. Maybe a few that we lean towards, but there's not. None of these seem to really hit home in a strong way, other than maybe the ones that seem to have a little bit of evidence that seems realistic, right? Stellar sea lion, but not his whatever the other one was called. Mm-hmm. Maybe when it comes to the ones that we've seen, photographs of cadavers and things like that, you can go, oh, well, they definitely saw something and they found something and we know what that something is now. But any of these that you're leaning in towards, Fudge? Any one of these stories you're walking away with going, I think I'm going to start the blankety blank fan club?
I don't believe I'll be starting any fan clubs. I like the King Otter. That one was cool. I wish there was more info on this Frogman as well. And again, I apologize for to the cryptid community for mixing up Champ and Caddy. I'll never forgive myself for it.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna lose sleep, guys.
Yeah, I'm going to lose sleep tonight. I don't know if I'll ever be able to show my face in the cryptid community again.
You've discredited yourself.
Yeah, no shit.
Mm-hmm. You're
I'm
never
gonna get community noted on Twitter so hard.
You're never gonna be able to go to that Holiday Inn where they fucking have this little gathering.
Yeah. The Canadian Lake Monster Aficionados Club.
At the Secaucus Holiday Inn, you know.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of communities, we are building our community here. This is our 51st episode, which kind of, it puts us in new territory. We actually have a lot of stuff in our back catalog that you can check out at edgingthetruth.com. You can find us everywhere at edgingthetruth.com, as you can see right over there. You can also call us and call our wonderful voicemail line. We have a number you can call and leave us a message. Have you seen one of these crazy aquatic cryptids? We would love to hear your story. Call us at 917-979-6071. I'm going to be seeing one of my uncles who spent most of his life fishing and has probably pulled some weird shit into his boat. I'm going to ask him about this. I encourage anybody out there listening to ask people that you know that might have spent time maybe in the Navy, maybe in the Coast Guard, maybe on a fishing boat, maybe something like that, and they saw some weird stuff in the water. We'd love to hear your story. We also have a great shop where you can support us. If you want to buy our merch, we've got a bunch of fun merch. It's nothing special, but we like it.
It's very special.
It's very special because it comes from us. Shop.edgingthetruth.com. We've got shirts and hats and a lot more than what you're seeing here in this image. But it's the best way you can support us. And how else can they support us, Fudge? Clicking that like button and doing what else?
Like, subscribe, comment, tell a friend who tells a friend. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Edging the Truth. Edgingthetruth.com for all of your Edging the Truth needs. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate it. If you're listening to us on whatever platform it is, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, we're everywhere. Like and follow us there, subscribe to us there. We really, really appreciate it. Leave us a rating and review as well if you're on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. And call the voicemail.
And in case you didn't know, both of these fine gentlemen above me have their own podcasts. Andy's got a podcast called The Brew Party that happens from time to time.
Yeah.
And over here, Brian has a couple of podcasts that he does with comedian John Caparulo, one called Blatheria and one called Killing Crickets. You can check both of those podcasts out via all of our social media, which you can find on our website as well. If you want to figure out how to follow each and every one of us, you can do that. You can find us on Instagram. Our stuff usually covers all three of us, so you can find us that way as well. Our next episode will be an episode of Two Steps from the Edge with both of these fine gentlemen together talking about some new information in the news related to all of this stuff. So stay tuned a week from today. On behalf of Fudge and Brian, I'm Red. This has been Edging the Truth.
Visit edgingthetruth.com for more information and links to all our social media and podcast directories.